Hello, good afternoon. You are tuning in with Mandy-Lynn at Local 107.3 CFMH, your favorite only community radio station here in St. Awesome. I hope that everybody's doing well and everybody had a great long winter break and everybody's recuperating, enjoying some of that fine snow that's been out there and some of those storms. Hope that everybody's keeping warm right now. Want to take a minute to say thanks to our guests from last week, and we have a few upcoming really great shows, so make sure you tune in and make sure you check out the radio webpage to have a listen on that. Really super excited also about today's guest from AGT. By popular demand, lots of folks have been asking for him. The one, the only, Oliver Graves. How are you today, Oliver?
I'm okay.
Awesome. And I've had
Yeah.
probably about 6 coffees, so.
Oh wow, that's more coffees than I've had in the last 5 years. So I am not a coffee drinker.
No. What's your preferred beverage?
I like water quite a bit. I mean, I don't mind a tea every now and then. Nice, milk and sugar. But I'm a sweet tooth person, so like hot cocoa.
Hot cocoa. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Do you make it with, so you'll add water to your hot cocoa, or are you the milk guy? Will you put milk in it?
I'll do either way. I try not to have too much dairy, but milk,
Mm-hmm.
it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Water-based ones are nice though, if you don't want to have to overload.
They
Food,
are.
what goes into my body is a big issue and thing. It's a big part of my life, actually. So
Really?
yeah, yeah. Because I can't have gluten. I have a lot of inflammation issues. So yeah, dairy is like a maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Gluten's a no.
Mm-hmm.
And then meats, fruits, vegetables. That's a yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what. So you got to be careful, basically, when you're getting anything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. It's because it's a serious thing. I really seriously cannot have wheat, barley, malt. So like even just getting a chocolate milkshake because they're malt milkshakes. I
Yeah,
can't
it's
I can't
malty.
always get those everywhere.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So thanks for taking time to meet with us today. We're super excited.
I'm glad somebody is. I'm not usually excited for anything. So.
So I wanted to first start off by talking to you about AGT. If we could go back just a little bit, talking about how long have you been doing stand-up comedy and what got you into it?
Well, I was touch and go with it when I was in high school, which I wasn't too serious then, when I was 16. So when I turned 21, I wanted to get a bit more serious about it. So it took a while, but I started grinding and going to, San Francisco, Oakland. That was probably around like 2013-ish. And so at the time, it's funny, a lot of people that know me from AGT, a lot of people thought that was like my first time or like I was really new.
Yeah.
And it's like at that time, like 2013 is when I was really taking it seriously. Like that's the thing. I'd done it. So people say, "Oh, I've been doing stand up for how this long, this long." I'm like, it doesn't feel right for me to say I started in 2013 because I'd done it before then. 4 or 5 years prior. Like I did it in high school and stuff. So it's like that wasn't my first time. But
Right.
then for whatever it was from 2013 to 2018, I had a good 5 years of kind of figuring things out, writing my material, and then I was on TV. So it's like I had all that experience. We were like, oh, he's probably like 6 months in. He's probably really new to this. It's like, no, I was pretty jaded already, and I'm pretty over it at that point.
That's fair. And so what made you want to start a life in comedy?
I didn't feel like I had anything else going for me. I didn't feel like it was, there was anything else popping out. Like, oh, I could do this. I could pursue this. Like, I wasn't going to become a teacher. I wasn't going to become a NASA scientist. I was just like, okay, well, if I'm going to do anything, people have always told me I'm really funny. I love writing. I love performing, and stand-up comedy is sort of it's the outlet to be able to do all those things. If you want, if you want to be an actor, if you want to perform, you can do that. But if you want to write, you don't become an actor. If you want to write and that's all you want to do is write and you don't want to perform, then you can just be a writer. But if you want to sort of combine all these things and be in control of it, then you kind of have to become a stand-up comedian.
Sure. That makes sense. And who is some of your favorites that when you think back to before you started comedy, or maybe not even necessarily comedians, but maybe who are some of your biggest influencers?
I really looked at musicians more. There's a lot of comedians I really like. I like Maria Bamford, and it's hard not to say like Mitch Hedberg and
Of
people
course.
who are doing things a little bit different. But more I was looking at things that's from a performer's perspective about what are people seeing when they go and see a show? What are they getting out of it? And am I going to just wear blue jeans and a hoodie, and that's what people see that night? I'm like, and then you can elevate this. You can add more. You can add another layer. So that's why I like people like Daft Punk, the musicians, Lady
Absolutely.
Gaga.
Of course.
I look up to. It's not like even Kiss is another one, or
Mhm.
Gwar. Like these aren't necessarily bands or music I listen to, but just looking at what they were doing as far as entertainment wise.
And was there, when did you get, I guess, or did you have rather an aha moment where you know how a lot of folks that we interview, that we talk about like an aha moment. Did you have that where there was a point where you said, maybe I could really make a go at this?
No, unfortunately, I don't. I mean, maybe I could have one later in life. I don't know. I've just always been a performer. I've just always tried stuff. And I did street performing for a while, and it was always about like what else can I do? I was always a writer, always writing things. I loved writing one-liners and posting them on MySpace, because that's how far back my social media history goes. Is to MySpace. I did that when I was in high school. But I didn't think of myself as a comedian then, and it's just I was just taking pieces and putting them all together and just continuing to move forward with what I was doing.
Right, right. And so you talk a lot about writing. Have you written any books or anything like that? Or like, you know how every artist has their own books or their own kind of method to things. So did you start like a songwriting, or did it turn into comedy? Like,
I started with just, yeah, like I said, the one-liners on MySpace, and it kind of became more like thoughts. They weren't necessarily jokes. Sometimes I just would have these open dialogues. I started a website and would put stuff on there. Got into LiveJournal and Dead Journal, where so I know everyone does that. It's like it was a thing. It's like, well, then everybody's a writer. I'm like, no, I actually identified myself as a writer. I would tell people I'm a writer. I would work on fiction. I liked writing fan fiction. That's a whole. I'd hate to read any of that now. I don't need to see anything that I wrote when I was 16 about whatever anime I was into at the time. But that's something I wanted to do. Is I wrote short stories. I have a few collections of short stories that I'd actually like to put into an anthology. So I need to work on that. So I don't have a book yet, but I also write for a newspaper right now, which is great. I have my own column. I'm an award-winning journalist, which makes no sense to me. I don't know, like,
wow, incredible.
I haven't looked it up. I want to check. I might be the only award-winning goth journalist. Like, I'll have to check. There might be another goth journalist that's also been honored with an award. But the California Journalism Awards, it's only California that's recognized me, so it's not a big deal. But because there's a whole world. But that's something at least.
Only California, because it's
Yeah, it's
so
only
small
California.
on the map. It's so
Yeah,
small on the map. You're
yeah.
right. So do you write weekly, bi-weekly,
It's a
monthly?
bi-weekly column, so I should have one that actually comes out. What's we're looking at Thursday, every other Thursday. So one came out yesterday, I guess is what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about your AGT time. So your moment when you came out on stage, you absolutely crushed it. You came out, it's what everybody is still talking about. Um, uh, your surprise on it, your reaction to it. It was just Howie's reaction. It was just beautiful. Like, did you envision how that would happen? Like, can you talk us through like that process? I'm sure you've been asked that question a million times.
I didn't think any of that was going to happen. It's the longest day of your life, or at least it was for
Really,
me. Well, yeah.
really.
So, if you're over 18, they can make you wait all night. They get you there as early as they can to start filming B-roll, just you sitting, you talking, like they interview you real quick. So they can get you there 9, 10 in the morning, and the show with the audience. People get tickets to the show to see it with the judges. That doesn't start till like 5 in the afternoon. So you're there from 10 to 5, and it's just extra additional filming. You do a whole like 8-hour days of work and then you still haven't done the show that you're doing later. And since I'm over 18, they have kids there. They have a bunch of acts that have people under 18. They can't make them work that long, or work. It's not work, but they can't make them be there that long. And there's guardian issues, parent issues. So they get to come in later, and then they got to film all of them, and then they got to start the show, and then they got to make sure all of them perform and are done by a certain time. Like they have like a less of a window. So it made me realize when I was there, I realized this watching all this happen. I'm like, oh my God, I can just be here for forever. Because the show, they say, oh, it goes till like midnight sometimes. Because then they do one show, ticketed audience, they leave, then another audience comes in with their tickets and everything. And they film 2 like 3 to 4 hour shows back to back. So I was like, well, you might go up in the first one, you might go in the second one. So it's just long and exhausting. And it wasn't, like jet lag, because it's like I'm a Californian and I flew down to Southern California.
Yeah.
But still, like, just the time when you have to wake up. It was like a 3 a.m. flight. So yeah, I didn't change time zones, but I'm stressed and I had really bad sleep just from all that. So I was exhausted all day. So, being backstage, every now and then there's like, you could be next for hours.
Right.
As the show's going on, as I'm watching a band play, as I'm watching like Duo Transcended. They were the aerialist stunt husband and wife. He's a really big buff guy, and she's got like fire red hair or something, and they got to do their thing, and they got a huge, big, just roarious like applause, all that. And I'm like, okay, great. Then Alex Hooper, comedian who I got to meet and hang out with that day, he goes out and they boo him and they buzz him and they don't like him, and he's one of the only comedians I got to be backstage and watch and listen to. And I was like, oh crap, they hate comedy. That was my feeling, but he has completely different feelings because it was his performance and everything. And we've talked a little bit about it, how he's like, he wrote an article about how he bombed. I'm like, I thought he was doing really well. I thought there was people that were laughing and he was killing it for like 15, maybe 20% of the audience. But then there's this loud other 20%, they're way louder. But my thought was, I'm screwed. I have to go out there at some point in the next, however, whenever it is.
Right.
So I was ready to get buzzed. I was ready to just bomb and move on, because I'm like, he is bringing energy. He was bringing jokes. I'm like, I am less of what he does, and they weren't giving him anything. They were like pushing him out, even though he was roasting them. I should probably add that he did do something different. But I still thought, I'm doing something different. Neither he or I were going to be doing typical stand-up comedy. And I thought, well, if they're not into what he's doing, why would they be into what I'm doing? So when all the cheering and the applause, I'm like, no, I did not think that was, because that's not the way my day was going. It felt just the complete different direction all the way up until that moment.
And then so you did your bit, you did your set, and hearing, I guess, when were you the most starstruck or gobsmacked with? Was it with Howie, his reaction, being a comedian from Canada, might I add, but was it having Simon tell you the things that he said? Like, that's gotta, man.
So I really didn't want to care what the judges said, because I knew, I'm like, I felt like the judges probably weren't going to like me, but I knew myself as a performer, and I knew what I was capable of. I known from what shows I had done. I had done a few shows with like a couple hundred people before, so it wasn't near the audience, because that audience was like 1,500 people or something, so 7 times what I've ever performed for. But I knew, I'm like, I'm gonna be able to get a lot of those people. I'm gonna make them laugh, and that's gonna be all right. So the judges might go, well, whatever, you're just kind of boring. Like, why the makeup? They figure they're gonna make fun of me, and they made fun of me when I first walked out before I ever said anything. So they kind of got it out of the way. So I was really like, it doesn't matter what they say or what they think, what Simon or Heidi or any of them. And Simon, he kind of was like last. He kind of finally gets to it, and he starts saying, like, when I think of all these comedians, they all blur together, apart from you. And it's like that did hit me, because it's like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to be like all the other comedians, but I also want to be good. Like you could not be like other comedians and be bad. That's not hard. There's ways to stand out, but it's can you stand out? Can you be different? And can you be funny and good at it? And it was all of that positive response.
And it was super positive. People. I mean, gosh, it was so fantastic to just watch, but to be in the moment. And then, I mean, and I think your reaction, I think everybody else's reaction, like, did that like reinforce anything that you felt about comedy? Because comedy, like you said, it can go two different ways, and there's lots of folks that try, that fail. There's lots of folks that succeed, do very well. And when you and I think about some of the greats that are out there, that have taken years to be able to get to where they need to be, where, it's with comedy, you're not starting out in the first year and getting thousands of dollars each show. You're starting out getting maybe $20 at a club and a sandwich or a drink sometime or something. Talk a little
Yeah,
bit about that.
that's one of the jokes I tell people. I'm like, well, I get paid in pizza and I'm gluten intolerant, so I don't get paid.
but
That's
but
very
what
that's very much a thing. You get paid $20, but sometimes, I drove 90 minutes across a bridge, so like there goes $6 for that. There goes this for the gas. It's like you're not making money. There's wear and tear in your car. You're losing money to just go and make an appearance, make a little effort to try out your material, try to meet other people, and hopefully, get booked for another show that could maybe put you in a little positive. Oh, this one actually gave you like
Yeah,
$60, but then you had those two or three where it just was all went to gas and transportation and whatever. That's still normal.
yeah.
I still kind of try not to. I still sometimes do that kind of stuff today.
You still do because you're just to try material out, or like, so.
Right. Yeah. Like I want to be able to perform for 15, 20 minutes, and then this pizza place says yes. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go check that out and drive the 90 minutes to do it because they want me there, and it's a lower, not advertised show.
And do you find that before you talked about not getting booked a lot before, what would not being booked a lot look like? Like in a year, would you do 30 shows, 50 shows, 100? And then now what's your schedule look like? I mean, I know we have to factor in COVID. I guess
Yeah, yeah.
that's
My schedule now is not very reflective. The better answer was what it looked like a couple years ago when I was driving all
pre-COVID.
over
Yeah,
Southern
yeah, yeah,
California and
yeah.
Central Valley and headlining shows. Because I went from like people would go like, I don't know where to put you on shows. They would say that to me. I would ask them like, can I get a spot? Like, what do you have? Like, can I do 7 minutes? And they'd want me to open. And opening it's the hardest spot. It's like, okay, so you're just trying to get me out of the way. Like, do you think I'm a good opener? It was a question I would have to ask people then. I'm like, if you think I'm a good opener, I'll open your show. If you actually want me to do it. If you're just trying to put me on it to kind of just give me a spot and get me out of the way, like, I'll probably still do it, but I want to know. But now I get to feature and headline. I get to have 20 minutes, 40 minutes. The show is me. People are coming to see me
Yeah.
because that's what they want.
Yeah, and being an opener too, because you have to. And I like what you said about that. Like, do you want? Am I the because opening in comedy is like arguably that's a big job, opening, being an opener in any show. So I can see where you come from. Asking that question.
It sets a lot of the tone, and I was comfortable doing it. I still will do it because if
Hmm.
if someone wants me to do it because they think I'm strong, I'm like absolutely. But it
Yeah.
was being regulated to like you get a 5 minute opening spot. It's like okay, well that's not that's not really being booked on a show when you have to like beg and ask for it and you don't get paid.
Right. Um, and I guess what is without COVID? So yeah, have you been doing bigger shows now? Like you're always on the go. I know you're always on the go.
Well, being able to do something that's centered around me is great. So people come, I get to have 30, 40 minutes. That way I'm not just a slice in it. I'm a much bigger piece of the pie. I'm like
Of
half the
course.
pie.
Yeah.
So that way the energy of the show can just kind of be handed to me where, comedians will kind of come out. It'll be about half two or three other comedians and half me. So it's just I get control of the audience then. And it's so great to kind of just be able to do the ups and downs, the back and forth, because I have a lot of low energy, but I need to cut it up and have different
Okay.
breaks. but all of that, it's me and my energy. I love it.
And what I like about you is I like that you have, I think, one of the best abilities that I know of for your pausing and for being able to wait. So me, for example, I'm like talk on it, blah, blah, blah. You have such a great talent for being able to pause and wait. And like, I think that that carries so well on stage as well with your stage demeanor. Because like, if you're getting a laugh, you have enough control to be like, all right, I'm going to wait a minute. I'm going to take this laugh in. When you see like a lot of folks that are newer to the biz, and then you see folks that are even seasoned in the biz, that they're like, all right, they're getting good laughs and they're jumping on to the next joke right after that. And you're like, wait a minute, digest this one first for a minute. But the amount of, and the way that you carry your energy, I think. So to me, when I think about you, and I think about your performances, I think that your energy, the way that you carry your energy, and the way that you do your pauses, the way that you speak, that alone is unique. Forget about content. That is
Right.
unique. You must notice that.
It's very purposeful, and it's contrary to how comedians are sort of taught to do comedy, because we'll go out to open mics where there might actually be
Yes.
an audience and you get 3 to 5
hmm
minutes. So
hmm
if you're only getting 3 to 5 minutes, what would you do? Would you take
hmm
pauses? Would you only do 6 jokes or whatever, 2 bits, whatever? Or would you try to talk faster, do more, and get more out of that 3 to 5 minutes? And most comedians learn to put more in, that they got to put more and more in. So rather than a 5 minute set, it becomes, well, I can do it in 3 minutes. So if you can do it in 3 minutes, then you actually, when you get a 5 minute set, you can do 2 extra minutes. You don't stretch that 3 out into a 5. So they learn to make a 7 minute set that way. I'm like, well, when I do a 5 minute set, it's a 5 minute set. It's 5 minutes that I planned out. I don't then turn that into a 3 minute set. I don't then learn to do my 5 minutes in 3 minutes and then get to add more. It's like, no, if I get 3 minutes, I do much less. So I got a lot less in a way out of going out to open mics, because I had to take those pauses. I had to be slow and let things reset. So it was really hard to do open mics. It's still hard to do open mics because of that, because I can't go faster. I can't, add more to it. And I remember there was a comic, I was headlining a show, and he was listening and watching me, said to me, he's like, "You're so patient." Because I would do a
Yes.
joke, and I
Yes.
and I wait, and I let things burn, I let it go.
Yes. And it's so good though. It's so good.
It is hard. It's hard. I know comedians, they don't like silence. It's like, you can't be afraid of silence, especially if you know it's not silent. If there's the murmuring, if there's the chatter, if it's calming down, it's not silence. It's you letting them enjoy what just happened. Now, if it's
Yeah.
silence, like, yeah, the joke fails. But even still, you have to let it be silent. Just let it, if because I do one-liners, so sometimes I have about a 50-50 ratio when I'm not having such a strong set. But
Okay.
that still means half of what I'm doing, they're liking. And I'm
Yeah,
not
which
gonna
is good.
talk over myself to get to the half that I think is gonna work. I'm gonna just let it go. It's fine, and then get to another joke.
And then I guess what, so after you do that and you finish and you know that so your pauses, of course they're purposeful, like for each one. And I feel like it's well thought out too, when you do it, like you're like, all right. Like it's just, you don't move, like you don't move, right? You stay so in, like in, you stay within the craft of what you're doing right now. You don't, I don't, when I see you perform, I don't see you like escaping with any of that. And I'm trying to explain it like the best way. Like you just know to stay within what you're doing right now. And that is like an art by itself.
It's very difficult. Like, you're giving me more praise than I deserve, but that's me. But it's very hard to be in that moment, because that's the whole thing about comedy, is it's not a script, it's not a performance, it's not, you're not getting Shakespeare being that just monologue and then you just go. It's not on rails. It is permeable, the fourth wall of like acting and performing. The fourth wall in
Totally.
comedy, you can pass through like a ghost, that, because the audience is there with you. It's happening, whether they laugh or don't laugh, whether someone laughs really loud. That's something I remember I've called out before. Someone was laughing really hard at a joke, and I just stopped and I took a pause for that, and they kept laughing. And then I said something like, "Wow, you really liked that one," and then that got a laugh because the audience isn't deaf; they can hear that and that kind of stuff, that kind of energy. You have to play with it, and you have to recognize it. And it's very hard to be in the moment while also trying to do your performance, because
Yeah.
that's also the thing you're taking care of, is everything you're doing on stage has to continue to happen while also taking care of everything else that they also could be aware of, and whether or not you should acknowledge someone who said something or just move on, or a plate that broke in the background, or just any of these things. That's when people say comedy is hard. It's all of those elements that I think makes comedy really hard.
And they say comedy comes from pain, and some folks say it does and it doesn't. Do you draw anything from your real life from pain, or do you draw your comedy from life experiences or from past or present? Or some folks will even say of some folks that I know that are in comedy will say it comes from visions in their head of things they wish they said, or predominantly reactions, of course.
Well, my comedy doesn't come from joy and pleasure, so I I did a lot of material, or I still do a lot of material about dating and being single and those frustrations. So that is definitely more in the despair element. But a lot of what I like to write and what I like to go for is more absurd. And I think, as I've been told by my editor before and a few other people before, that I just really have a different brain. Like, they wanted my column because we want people to be able to get into your mind. That's what sort of writing a comedy and just liking someone's personality even is. And that I just think differently and see things differently. I'm like, I have a different perspective. I'm like, I am 6.5 feet tall. It's like 6'6", not 6.5 inch. I
Wow, you're tall.
Yeah. So it's like my perspective
I'm five
literally
four.
is different. I used to be 5'4". That was a while ago though.
I used to be 6'6".
But there is absolutely, like, if you want to write comedy, look at tragedy and try to make it funny. If you want to write drama, you look at something wonderful and joyous, and then you try to make it tragic. Like you flip it basically. So that is a really easy way to go with comedy. Like, what's something that's awful that's just happening, we have to deal with. Like, well, what's funny about it? Is there anything funny here? Is it worth thinking about? And that's something I've kind of always tried to put like mental energy into. Like, is there anything funny that happened here? I'm like, probably not, because not everything is going to be funny. I'd say it's like 90% of the things I think of, I'm like, crumple that up, throw that out.
And so other than comedy, what are your hobbies, or what is Oliver doing on a typical day?
Oh, I'm a big nerd, really, really big nerd. I mean, it's should come no shock. I'm really into monsters. I was just reading about Dragon Ball, the original Dragon, Goku,
Yeah, of
the
course.
anime, and
Yeah.
it's the old one, and he's fighting, or his group of people, they're fighting monsters to be able to find a Dragon Ball. And I loved it's like when I was reading about the monsters, it's like, oh, they fight a vampire, then they fight the Invisible Man, then they fight a mummy. I'm like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever, that they were bringing in the monsters from like Universal Studios, like, which I love. I love all that. I think the beginning of the Invisible Man is one of the strongest, best openings to a movie ever. The one with Claude Rains from the
Of
30s.
course.
It
Yes.
it pulls you in so well, because back then they went from making theater and plays to then recording, and they took all of those, you know ideas and everything, and they're like, what if we added this slightly different technical level to it? And they did it, and they did it so well. And I feel like that's one reason why people are like, oh, movies aren't as good anymore. Yeah, because the people that make them grew up with movies. They didn't grow up with theater. They didn't actually have to make these things in the same way. But yeah, I love all that stuff. So yeah, I love cartoons and video games and monsters all around.
And you're a collector. What do we have behind you here?
All kinds of stuff. There's a lot of Transformers over there. I mean, I keep on my desk a glow in the dark creature from the Black Lagoon. So he's not going to show up very well because he's all white. He's
He's
supposed to
white.
be green,
Yeah.
but he glows in the dark, so he looks really cool in the dark. And I have a hologram skeleton man. I think the line is called Supernaturals or something like that. And he has,
Okay, that's showing. That looks really cool.
yeah,
Look at that.
he changes. from like one
Oh,
kind of dead to another kind of dead.
yeah. That looks really cool. So you're a collector.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I love going to cons. I've been spotted at a few conventions in the Bay Area, which is fun. Comic book kind of conventions, and yeah, I love that stuff.
Have you ever been starstruck, and by who, if you have?
Starstruck. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, other than getting on with Tuning In with Mandy-Lynn host. I mean, other than that.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's a given. That's a given.
No, I mean, honestly, when you contact me like and you're like, oh, people wanted to see. I'm like, that stuff blows me away more than I've met a handful of like whoever like Tyra Banks was really cool to me and everything like that. But hugging Tyra Banks was really
Oh,
neat.
I'm jealous.
But
Yep.
but it's stuff like when you're like, oh, people wanted me on your show. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I still can't wrap my head around that. Like I try not to just kind of like the 60 million views this thing gets on Facebook. Like I can't even think of that. Like millions.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense in my head.
Yeah. You trended for so long. Like and it's good that you don't try to think of that because it probably keeps you grounded more. Like where you're like, all right, because you know what? Who is it that said give it your all? Whether it's in front of if it's just me and you having a conversation with nobody else, and then if it's 10 million people, always go out there on stage and give it your all. Always perform giving it your all. Right?
Yeah, and I again, it's like the
You're
the trend.
humble. You're very humble. You're a very, very humble guy.
I'm very lucky because it's like a new season of America's Got Talent will come out, new comedians will be on, and then people will be like, "Oh, since you watch those comedians, what about?" And I'm in that list, and I'm like, "That's crazy. That's just crazy to me that like I'm one of the top 5 things that pop up after people watch." I'm like, all of this internet stuff, and it's just not going away. And I just like, yeah, people want me. I'm like, "Oh, I'll be on this show. Of course, I'll be on this show."
Yeah. And can I ask you, so here's some questions from your Canada fans. The first one is,
Yeah.
what is your 5-year plan? What does it look like? If we weren't thinking with COVID though, I think we can place that in there in this scenario.
Well, I wanted to drive around more. I was applying to festivals and I want to do more competitions. Yeah, I got to get into those. So that's another issue. I have also been applying to every now and then like other reality shows, other things like that. So that's kind of like the 2-year plan. I
TV.
don't know if I have a 5-year plan. I don't know if I have a plan after those 2 years, after those do or do not work out.
TV though, I could see you in TV.
Right, and I'm knocking on some doors. I don't like I'm working on and with some other performers and stuff about what I can do to help highlight my humor because I do a lot of solo stuff. Like I'll jump on Instagram lives, YouTube lives. Like, but I
Right.
don't think that gets my personality up. I don't think that gets my humor. And I need the contrast. Like I need someone else. So
Yeah.
I'm working with some people about trying to make that happen more as well.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And then in terms of, so you talk about Dragon Ball, what are some of your other favorite shows that you're watching right now on anything, any streaming?
I'm watching Silicon Valley right now. That's a cool
Is
show.
that good?
I like it because I mean I did not like what's it the Big Bang Theory. That's not real nerds. We don't actually act and talk like that. We're Silicon Valley. I'm like, this is how nerds actually act and talk. This is more accurate, and it actually gets things fairly accurate when they talk about computer jargon and things. And I'm not from Silicon. I don't know if people understand like the geography. Like I am from Northern California, but I am about almost 2 hours north of Silicon Valley. I've been there. I've been to some conventions and things down there, but I don't actually live there, so I don't have that close of a connection to it. But I enjoy that show right now.
And you talked a little bit about where you drew inspiration from music at the beginning of our interview. And would you say that if we were to pull up your playlist, what would we find like your top 5 or 6 plays right now? What are you listening to?
Oh, it's gonna be a lot of disco and 80s.
80s, me too. What's your
Yeah,
favorite 80s?
I love all the one-hit wonders. I mean, I've
That's
been
right.
listening to New Order a little bit lately, so that's been fun. I listen to musicals sometimes too. I like a lot of the Disney music. I love the villain
Yeah.
songs,
Yeah. Of course,
so
who
I like to.
doesn't?
We have to be prepared. That's why.
You have
That's
to.
those poor unfortunate souls.
And what about podcasts? What are you listening to for you listen to any podcasts or anything like
I don't
that?
think any of the ones I'm listening to are current. I did really like Kevin Pollock Chat Show. Kevin Pollock is great. If you ever see him, in an interview. I think Chat Show ended his podcast, but I still go back and listen to some of the older ones. But anytime I hear him talk, he is such. I mean, he's a comic too, so that's where he started and got into being a film actor and all that. But he has so many great stories. That's the thing that's great. I'm like, we need more comedians in these places because they're so good at telling these stories. Because he's like, well, I was on this film set and this. I'm like, you're not going to get that out of an actor. You're going to get that out of a comic. So please continue to work with comics because they're going to remember everything and tell all these great things that happen.
And the great thing about it, about comedy and traveling, is no venue's the same. So you have to be a comedian, you have to be like a successful one or like a going one. I think that you have to be like ready to go, 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 don't you? Like you don't know if your microphone's going to work at one place. You don't know what the environment's going to look like at any venue. So being off the cuff and then being able to adapt to any kind of situation that you could be placed in, because you know you've done so many shows, so you must figure that.
Yeah, I always go every now and then I'll go somewhere and they'll be like, "Do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need," like they'll ask me questions. It's like, oh, I'm not used to people even caring about any of that. I'm not, like you guys are putting more thought into this than I was. Like, wireless mic or wired mic? I'm like, well, I tend to prefer wired because wireless fall apart. Like, but like, do you move around? I'm like, I don't move around. I'm like, oh, you haven't seen me. But they don't know that, so it's like they ask these questions. It's like I'm fine with however it ends up being. But yeah, that's a good point that you make. Is you don't know how it's going to be. You have to be. You can't be in your head like this is exactly perfect and how it needs to be. I'm like, I'm just going to get out there and perform, and I'm going to adapt to whatever the environment is like.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I want to talk a little bit about your style because you have a unique style as well, and it's great. It's amazing. And talk about where you draw. Is it unique? Is there somebody that you looked up to get your style from? Like your hair, your makeup. It's just so good. It's so good.
I could have done better. I was looking at it. I'm like, really. I think most of it comes from being in high school and hanging out with like the trench coat, the goth kid. I mean, I don't know that we had like goth kids, but they were still called the goth kids because we wore black. We played tabletop games. We played, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh. So we
Yeah.
played things that were associated with like the occult and Satanism, but not really. They were just games. I had a black trench coat, and I like this stuff. I like supervillains. I like Disney villains. I've always wanted to be one. It's just fun, and like this is kind of what they look like. I love the energy of it. I like putting another layer out there. I think it's important too because when people see you, they're gonna judge you. I'm like, well, I'm really tall, I'm skinny, I have a gap tooth. Like, like, how do I get them to look at something? Most people don't even know I have a gap tooth.
I
That's
didn't know
what
you did.
that's what black lipstick does.
See, I need to learn to pause like that more.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Is like I was always really shy. I didn't like the fact that I stood out because that's what happens when you're tall. But eventually, I just embraced it. I was like, well, I'm gonna stand out no matter what. You can't hide when you're 6'6". Like it's just not happening. So it's like, well, I'm gonna stand out anyway. Might as well stand out. But then I stand out in a way that makes people stand away from me. So it's really fun to be left alone. I love the energy I give out.
I love it so much. And so when did you start to develop your style? Like a lot of
That was
my
that
goth
was probably high
friends are
school.
high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of my friends start some of my friends were grade 5, 6 actually. And then grade 8, 9 are being like, hey, this is what I feel. So this is what I want to be. And this is me. And I think that that's super important. Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of it might have been Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park. He wears all black leather jacket.
Mm-hmm. And was there ever a time where you thought to yourself, I want to be the same, or I like being different? Or did you know you were different? I guess that's so a lot of comedians or folks in the biz talk about being different and talk about how they knew or they felt they were different. And then where folks that I've interviewed said, we've tried to be this person or we've tried to be that person. And then once we realized being that person or trying to be that person isn't working out, I'm just going to be myself.
Yes, it's for sure similar. I always wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like everyone else and just do whatever they're doing, have fun. Look how much fun they're having friends and eating nachos and going to parties or whatever they're doing. Like, okay, that'd be cool. I'd love to fit in, but I didn't get that I was different. I didn't understand what is it about me that's not, you know, like why don't I have 1,000 friends on MySpace? Like what am I doing wrong? What am I, why am I not at the party with everybody else? What's going on here? And it took me a while to kind of realize like, well, I am different. And then not wanting to be that way. Like how do I get out of that? And then finally realize like, no, don't. It's better. This is so much better. Like what I do is people are jealous of that. Like the grass is always greener, Like,
Yes.
oh, I wished
Yeah.
I could have
Yeah.
fit in with all them. But I'm like, but there's people that go, I wish I could do what you do, because something else I don't have that I've never had people ask about, like stage fright. Like I've never had stage fright. I've never had like
Really?
the concept of public speaking being. I'm like, no, I can get in front of, if I know what I'm doing. If I don't know what I'm doing, then I'm gonna have, obviously if you're like, hey, get on stage and talk about the chemical balance of pools. I'm like, I don't know anything about that. But if you tell me to talk about, Pokemon, I'm like, I can talk about Pokemon for hours on stage. So it's really just like the audience is not an issue though. And
Right.
I don't get that concept. Like people have explained it to me. I'm like, but I don't understand. So it's just like I know I'm very different in that respect. I'm like, and that ability, it's like not that I don't care. People, get that, like I do and I don't. It's just I don't have those concerns, and realizing that that's a huge pro that so many people wish they had. It's like, oh well, I'm dismissive in so many other ways. I'm not as
Okay.
engaging. Like I'm missing all that, but I have this other thing that so many people wish they had, and just learning to kind of accept that people have different things about them. So that's been a more and more recent thing that I've been realizing.
Yeah, and I love that. So anyone listening, you're tuning in with Mandy-Lynn, 107.3 CFMH, your favorite only community radio station here in St. Awesome. I am joined by the amazing Oliver Graves. Oliver, we just have a couple more quick questions for you, and then we'll hit stop recording. So thank you for your time. The next question is, if you are ready, is you talked about what you're watching on TV. Now, how about hobbies? Like, do you have a cool talent, a weird talent, or something that people would be fascinated to know about you?
I don't have any like hobbies per se. I think a lot of the things I do are pretty open. I like to draw, but I post a lot of my drawings online. I haven't done pen and ink in a while. I do like to do that, but I'm running out of ink. The other day I looked at some of my coins and tokens, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna scrub these up, and I have a Pac-Man token. It's gonna just not be
Oh, I
visible, I'm
see it.
sure.
No,
But
I can see it. I can see
yeah,
it.
it was looking not so good, so I got like a toothbrush and toothpaste and scrubbed it up, and that's neat because I love tokens and coins. I want to get more
Hmm.
tokens. They're fun.
Hmm.
But otherwise, most of what I do is just what's out there. I write. I don't always write for something else. Sometimes I just write stuff and that's for me. I'm throwing it away. It's just a hobby I kind of actually have. Although that's
Right. So
funny. It's
you'll
like
write stuff that nobody gets to see, that it's just for you to be able to, like,
I just needed
you
to
still.
write it down. Yeah, I just deleted like 10 files the other day. That I'm like, I don't need any of these anymore.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
great. That's amazing.
because I
That's
knew I didn't write them for an
incredible.
article. I didn't write them for comedy. I didn't write them for any other things. I just was writing them. I'm like, it's like write a letter and don't send it. Kind of did that. I like to work on other little things. I got ghosted recently, and I made like an old. I just copied um, the Civil War love letters, and I was like editing and changing things, and like wrote it all out. And I took
That's
a picture of it, and
amazing.
I sent it to the person that ghosted me, because it's like the longing like Civil War. Like that's just a thing. Like I got creative and I had to do. And again, that's not for entertainment purposes. Like I didn't do that for a show, right? Like I just did that because I thought it would be funny for me.
I enjoy it.
Like I think it's sitting.
I enjoy it so much.
I aged it. Like I got like the tea
Oh, look at
and
this.
and
Look at
burned
this.
it.
Look
And
what you did to the corner. That's
yeah.
so good.
So
So this is fantastic. You're creative in so many different ways.
and they're not gonna get. They haven't. I took the picture. I sent it to them. They haven't responded. Just like I wrote you this handwritten, and then I aged the thing and all that.
Yeah, like that's like going so old school. I love it so much. Like what is it, the pen and the quail, where you're like, listen, you didn't respond. I love it so. Maybe you need to put it in a bottle and like roll it up, put it in a bottle. Maybe we need to script it.
Right.
You're like,
Yeah,
well,
at the end, I'm
maybe
like,
you
but I
didn't get
cannot.
my point.
I must watch you become a ghost and hover away because they're ghosting me.
Yep. And hover
I
away.
put like that's the effort that you're missing out on that they could
It,
have. We could be dating, but no. So this is where talking about pain.
yes.
That's where yeah. I need an outlet. I need to be creative. I need to do something. I'm gonna work on something, but
So
yeah,
with dating, are you comfortable to talk about that a little bit about dating? You made some jokes
sure, sure,
about.
yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
I
You
would
made some
love to
funny
marry
jokes.
a Canadian and get a Canadian
Come
citizenship.
on
Is that a
over.
thing? Yeah, like that's absolutely. I mean, I date. There's not a whole lot. I mean, I could talk about it to no end, but there's all kinds of first date stories, second date stories, and
Well, if you have a ring, I mean, we could do it on air. I don't.
oh yeah.
Yeah, it would be legit. We don't have anyone to officiate us though.
And how long do I have to? Is it 6 months and I get the citizenship?
It's 6 months, then you can go free. Yeah, then you're fine after that. Six months, and then you can just go travel Canada. Maybe it's 4. I don't know, but we'll say 6 months just to be safe. Hey, do the
Just to
dishes and we're good.
squeeze 2 more months. I got it. I get you.
We're
Yeah.
good. I'll take those extra 2 months. So talk about the dating world though a little bit. Like you made some really like clever, funny jokes about must love dogs. I think it was something like that. And
Oh
then
yeah, they always say that must love dogs. I'm like, why do they say that? Why? I don't get it, but then it makes sense when you actually look at the faces of the people.
like you really touched a point with a lot of people. They're like, yes.
I do a lot of online dating. I do a lot of the swiping. I do a lot of
Mhm.
that from the toilet because I know I'm not the only one that's swiping before wiping.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's a whole world, and um, it's frustrating because people don't really know how to adapt to it. I don't either. Like I'm not saying like I'm better, but like I've done it so long. I think I have a little bit of a head start on some people who've never really done online dating, and some it's just disposable. It's like whatever, like crumple you up, throw away. I'm like, well, what are you looking? Put more into it, and you'll get more out of it. That's like anything in life.
Can that be your heading? Can that be your next tour? The name of it? That's great. Write that down. That is good. That is so true then. That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to hit stop recording for a second. Thank you so much, Oliver. We really appreciate it over here in Canada. Massive fans of yours. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
1 second.